People of the internet, welcome back to another video. It is I, Don Thomas, back in here with another one. As always, folks, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for the support on this channel. Without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into today's topic, folks. Got a video pulled up here, of course, comes from ESPN. Breaks down the viral news of a Michigan head coach who's gotten himself in a little bit of trouble. Of course, you guys may or may not be aware. I'll be sure to share my thoughts. I encourage you guys to share your thoughts down in the comment section below. Let's get a little bit more insight.
And it was stunning news out of Ann Arbor as the University of Michigan has fired Sherrone Moore as its head football coach earlier Wednesday following an investigation into Moore's conduct with a staff member. Following his dismissal, Moore was detained by police in Saline, Michigan, and was later in custody at the Washtenaw County Jail as a suspect in an alleged assault. Police said he remains in custody at this time. We welcome in Dan Wetzel, ESPN senior writer and contributor to the College Game Day podcast based in Michigan. And Dan, there are a number of layers to this story which you have been reporting throughout the day. Let's work our way backwards with the timeline, which now includes a police report that sheds a bit of light. What do you understand about that timeline, as I say, working our way backwards?
Pause right there before he dives in. Of course, as you see it there, Sherrone Moore, of course, who is now in custody in Washtenaw, Michigan County Jail after he's been fired as the head coach at Michigan. Word comes out that he's been having relations with an assistant who's also a staff member on the Michigan football team. Of course, that goes against Michigan's code of conduct, and he's gotten into some trouble. But there's, of course, a lot of different loopholes of things as news has been unveiling. This dates back a few months. Some people knew. Some people try to keep it on the low. This, that, and the other, whatever the case is. Of course, I typically want to search for the take-home value, right? We could get a little bit more details from this gentleman that's going to go into a little bit more of the details, but the take-home value, I think there's some take-home value for people in prominent positions, young men. I don't necessarily want to make this a race thing because, of course, there's the race card being thrown in here, whatever the case is, but I want to at least cipher out the value that we can take home as young men, as professionals, whatever the case is, people in positions of power, right? Let's get a little bit more details.
Okay, so Michigan concluded an investigation into Sherrone Moore earlier Wednesday and determined with credible evidence that he had had a inappropriate relationship with a staff member against university policy and his own contract, and he was immediately fired for cause. Soon after that, at about 4:10 p.m., Pittsfield Township Police just outside Ann Arbor responded to a call to residents where they were there to investigate an alleged assault. Sherrone Moore had left the place at that time and was later detained, as you said, by the Saline Police Department, which is another town a little bit outside of Ann Arbor, which then brought him back to Pittsfield Township. At 8:30 tonight, he was brought to the Washtenaw County Jail, where he is in custody due to the alleged assault, and actual charges will be determined by the Washtenaw County Prosecutor's Office in the next day or so.
All right, so those are the very serious issues related to this storyline, and we will wait for the clarity and the details as they are forthcoming in the coming hours and days. As for the story, as we work our way back to what you mentioned, which is the firing of Sherrone Moore, and I just want to be frank here. I mean, in college football circles, this was not a closely held secret. There was a lot of smoke,
right,
a lot of innuendo, but you all aren't in the business of reporting that. So I guess what I'm going to ask as it relates to this dismissal and the investigation is, when was it that Michigan really felt like they might be in the business of needing to find a new head coach?
Well, I think the investigation began, recently. At least this part of the investigation into Sherrone Moore's conduct, at least over a week ago. And like they said in their statement, you need credible evidence to make a firing, particularly for cause of the situation. Let's
pause right there. That's basically the gist without the messiness of the whole story. Of course, basically, this gentleman, of course, has been fired from a prominent position. I think, of course, they were saying he was making upwards of $6 million a year. At 5 years, signed a contract for $6 point something million a year over a 5-year period. Lost out on a lot of money when this news broke. Of course, as you heard there, people have been hearing whispers maybe about a week or so that something was going on. But of course, as they say, shit kind of hit the fan as recent as of yesterday, as of the time of recording this video. Basically, what I want to kind of focus on, again, the details, of course, a little bit whatever, and I'm not trying to make light of the situation, of course, as well too. I just want to kind of focus on the message that I'm trying to drive home, and I think that all people, again, in prominent roles, leadership roles, people of power, people of color, if you want to play the race card, whatever the case is. The trick of the devil. I think I even spoke of that as well too, how sometimes we let the devil trick us up out of our spot. And again, like, I'm not trying to speak as the moral police here, of course, because I am also human, and I do know that the flesh is weak, right? As I always like to say as well too. But sometimes we got to take things into consideration, and I want to reiterate this to myself as well too, and for all of us watching that, man. Sometimes it's just not worth it. When you work when you use a certain amount of energy or resources, or just the uphill battle that I'm pretty sure all of us at some point in our life had to go through to get to a certain level or status or tax bracket, whatever the case is. I'm gonna assume the blood, sweat, and tears that were put into those endeavors are gonna be worth a little bit more than a fling or whatever you want to call it, right? There's a lot of angles that I could kind of take on this, marriage and relationships and this, that, and the other, whatever the case is, which I did see some other commentators using those angles as well too. Long short of the story, of course, the man was indeed married, wife, kids of, I believe, 10 or 15 years. He was in a long-term marriage and was having relations with his assistant, which, of course, as you know, code of conduct against the code of conduct over at Michigan. They let him go, and so he gets fired, and then he goes out on what I would say, a mental rant, and was threatening to off himself, right? There's more details, of course. You guys could get some of the greater details. I don't want to drive home too much of the explicit details, but the man was, basically threatening to remove himself and all parties involved, basically, from this planet because of this newfound situation. So, of course, it's diving a lot deeper. So you lose your job, you get locked up, and, of course, your information, everything that was in the dark has come to light all across the internet. What is the take-home value? What is the message, right, that I take away from this, that you can maybe potentially take away from this as well, too? Sometimes it's just not worth it, right? And this is what I kind of use, in situations that I've been in as well, too, and the mindset that I embrace moving forward. You just got to weigh your current situation versus the potential of what you're up against or what you're entertaining. You see what I'm saying? And that could apply to any facet of life, right? So it's just like, all right, I see, speaking specifically to Sherrone Moore here, I'm an African-American coach at a prestigious college institution in a leadership role, which is the head coach, whatever the case is, right? Making a lot of money. It wasn't easy for you to get there, I'm going to assume, right? I got a wife, children at home, right? I'm front-facing, of course. Again, this is a front-facing position, of course, as we all say as well, too. It's that. You got to ask yourself, am I willing to lose that and jeopardize that? Is that, you're comparing that versus fill in the blank, right? Whatever that might look like. Again, specifically for him, it's, do I want to risk all of that versus this encounter with an assistant who I know 100% is frowned upon with this institution? Do I want to give that person that much leverage over me? And not saying that it was anything that was like blackmail or anything of the sort in this specific situation, but am I willing to lose, if this was to come to light, right? Am I willing to lose everything I worked so hard for this situation that I'm in right now, that I'm entertaining, knowing that I know that it's against code of conduct and this, that, and the other? Am I willing to lose out on this prestigious 5-year contract where I'm raking in about $6 million per year? Hefty amount of money, whatever the case is. Am I willing to lose, my wife, my kids, whatever the case is, my title, my role? Is that worth it? I'm comparing that. Is that versus this quick interaction, this fling, whatever the case is, this, that, and the other? Then I get it, of course. This can open up a larger conversation about marriage and love and relationships and this, that, and the other, yada, yada, yada. I don't necessarily want to go down that rabbit hole. I feel like that's an angle a lot of other commentators were kind of speaking on as well, too. But I'm just speaking specifically towards people in leadership roles and the work that I'm pretty sure you had to use to get into. And again, I'm talking to myself. Please don't confuse it as if I'm speaking from some type of moral ground, high ground, order the cases, because I do understand, especially as a man, as a man, right, fellas? I do understand when you are a high value man, an attractive, taken care of man, right? He's a fairly decent dude, right? Decent brother. I do understand what kind of comes with that to some degree, right? Like, I do understand, like, all right, cool, you are maybe highly sought after from people, what are the cases, but if the rules say, with this role, with this title, with this position that I've taken for myself, if the rules say that I can't mess with people, close to me, there's a bunch of people on this planet that you could probably have those relationships if you wanted to do it. So, but so close to home, you also hear a lot of people say, oh, don't, shit where you eat, for lack of a better word, whatever the case is, right? Don't, where you get your money is not where you should be doing anything else, right? Where you go to work, you handle your business, and everything else that you want to do outside of that should be done outside of the workplace, whatever the case is, right? There's a lot of examples that we can all look for. Again, I don't necessarily, in this specific situation, want to kick a man when he's down. That's another story for other conversations, of course, as well, too. But in this particular situation, I just want to drive home the fact that we worked very hard to get into the position that we are, right? A lot of people. We've seen this with Shannon Sharp. We've seen this with so many other people, right? Ime, who was a Udoka, former head coach of the Boston Celtics. He too kind of ran into some situations like this as well too. Like we've seen this time and time again. And again, I understand. Like I get it. Like I get it. I understand. But again, you just gotta sometimes. I would think that I would hopefully, that voice of reason that we all hopefully have in our minds. I hope that yells louder when asking myself, is it worth it? Am I willing to lose it all? As they say, right? I think these days they say, yo, he was willing to risk it all, right? He was about to risk it all for this, that, and the other. It's just like, am I willing to lose it all? Like, if I get caught, or if this goes south, or if this whatever the case is, am I willing to lose all of this for this specific moment, for this specific person that I'm dealing with on the side, on the low, whatever the case is that I'm trying to sneak and hide about? Is it really worth it? And a lot of situations, specifically in this one as well, too, I would assume the answer is no. It is not worth it, right? But hey, those are just my thoughts. Again, I am also human. I, too, am prone to mistakes. Just like you, I'm sure, are prone to mistakes, right? Crimes of passion, I think they call it, and the heat of the moment and things of that nature. I understand. The flesh is weak. I understand. But damn, brother. I'm pretty sure you worked pretty hard to get to where you was at, bro. Being the head coach at Michigan don't come easy, I would assume. Especially as an African-American man as well, too. I don't necessarily care to do too much of the race card, but let's keep it at. Let's not dismiss that. As an African-American man, I'm pretty sure it wasn't easy for you to climb the heights in which you have, especially at a prestigious institution such as Michigan, right? But nonetheless, those are my thoughts, folks, and I do encourage you to share yours down in the comment section below. What do you make of this? What take-home value? What lesson? What's the moral of the story that you took away from this shortcoming of this gentleman, Sherrone Moore, who's currently now in custody still as of the time of recording this video? What do you take away from it? Of course, I would like to hear your thoughts down in the comment section below. As always, the likes, the comments, the subscribes are all greatly appreciated. I will catch you guys on the next one.